All right, Digno, have we got everybody here?
We've just, I'm just watching the participant numbers going up. So maybe if we can give it 30 seconds.
Yep, just give me the heads up when we're ready to go.
I will, absolutely. Hello, everyone. On behalf of the Australian Water Association Victorian Branch, my name is Digna Nichols, the Victorian Member Engagement Manager. I welcome you. We're about to kick things off. We're just waiting for a few more people to join us. And it's really wonderful that you've taken the time to be with us at this time of the day when it's beautiful and sunny outside here too.
You found a good spot there, Nick.
Oh, sorry, I'm just noticing somebody's raised their hand. Please just pop your anything if you have any difficulties, just send us a little message via the chat. I think we'll kick things off, Amanda.
Great, thanks, Digna. Happy National Water Week, everybody. And on behalf of the Australian Water Association and the VIC Branch Committee, I'd like to welcome you to this event, the launch of the Merri Creek Women's Walk. I'm meeting you from the banks of the Merri Creek on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past and present, and those with us, including Auntie Di, who we'll be hearing from a little bit later on. This initiative was started midway through 2020 by some very committed AWA committee members who were trying to find an alternative way of getting the membership engaged and finding a way to connect people to water and country without being able to have in-person events. So I'm very proud of what they've all done in the last 18 months and really excited to be able to meet you from out here. But from now, and I'd also like to thank our sponsors who've made the funding of this event possible, Water for Good, and now my brain's sorry, Shay. Eurofins, thanks, Sam. And I'll hand over to Meredith Gibbs, who has really been leading this initiative, and she can give us a bit more of a background this is all about. So thanks, everybody, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thanks, Amanda, for that introduction, and welcome everyone to National Water Week and the launch of the Merri Creek Women's Walk. I'm Dr. Meredith Gibbs, Principal of Gibbs Advisory, a boutique law firm specialising in environmental, water and climate change law. But I'm here today in my capacity as a committee member of the Victorian branch of the Australian Water Association. I also wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet here on the banks of the Merri Creek, the Wurundjeri of the Kulin Nation. I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to thank Auntie Di Kerr, who is here today with us and will be officiating the Welcome to Country shortly. I'd also like to pay respects to other Aboriginal or First Nations people joining us today, including Auntie Bev Greet, and to acknowledge that it is through Auntie Bev and Uncle Lloyd and Robbie that I was first introduced to the Merri Creek about 25 years ago. The idea for the Merri Creek Women's Walk, a trail to acknowledge and celebrate inspiring women of the creek, came to me one day early in 2020 as I walked past Joe's Garden, where I am now, and as I often do, nearby to where the brutal attack of a young woman occurred in broad daylight as she was jogging along one summer's evening in December 2019. A day much like today. Her life changed in an instant, and my heart goes out to her every time I walk by. And this idea of walking by bothered me. At the time, the Me Too movement was saying that to walk by violence against women and not to do anything was to condone it and was an abrogation of personal responsibility. I felt like I was walking by, but I certainly wasn't condoning the violence. And to be honest, I was angry that this place, this beautiful place and its community was itself somehow despoiled by this violence. And so the idea of a women's walk as a way to reclaim the space to celebrate it, to feel comfortable in it again, and not to be defined by this awful violence began to take shape in my mind as a way to be able to walk by and say this behaviour is unacceptable. Violence against women is simply unacceptable. And as I thought about how I could make this happen and what it would look like, I wondered if it could also be about improving the waterway health of the creek, physical improvement of the creek and its surrounds. I knew that others, such as the Friends of Merri Creek and Merri Creek Management Committee, have been working for years to improve the creek. So I'd need to partner with them and to acknowledge their work over time. At that time, I'd been on the AWA committee for about 2 years, and I could see that this potentially could be a project we could do as a committee. It certainly aligned with AWA's core values, which are to share, connect, and inspire to drive a sustainable water future. And so it felt like a good fit. I pitched the idea to other committee members who were supportive, even excited about the idea of the project, although perhaps a bit uncertain as to what and how. And thankfully, I've been joined by a fabulous group of people who have helped shape and realise the vision. And I thank them for all their hard work in getting us to today. But it's also been a great joy, and we're so excited to be launching the walk today. While we do have ambitions for on-the-ground works, we've had to go online like everyone during COVID. And so today we are launching stage 1 of the Merri Creek Women's Walk, an online trail which tells the story of Wurundjeri people and the 5 inspiring women who have made a significant contribution to the Merri Creek and its communities, and with more stories to come in stage 2. So I hope that you'll be inspired by these women as we've been, and we want to thank them for making the Merri Merri what it is today, for all their hard work, and the very many people and organisations who've worked tirelessly with them to achieve what we see and enjoy today. For their vision, insight, persistence, and generosity, thank you. And I hope also that this walk will be a pathway for the future to strengthen and deepen the partnerships we've forged so far, and to keep connecting us to each other and to the land and waterways, and to keep inspiring us. We look forward to continuing to partner with Wurundjeri in particular on land that always was and always will be Aboriginal land. And with that, I would like to invite Auntie Di to come on screen for the Welcome to Country. Thank you.
Thank you. I honour my ancestors and my elders, and I pay homage to the sacred grounds that we're all on. I wish to acknowledge any elders of different nations, peoples from across the waters, and I acknowledge you all, and I pay my respects to your ancestors, elders, and families. It's an honour and a privilege to be able to do your welcome today, and the Merri Creek is very close to my heart through my grandmother and my mother, and their stories of it being a women's site, and where they did feather flowers, bark paintings, which was painting with different coloured bark, not actual paint or ochre. And myself and my girls and my granddaughters now make feather flowers in their honour. And I was there for the community gathering when the young lady lost her life, and I was amazed about how many people from different walks of life were there to remember that we need to be safe, but we need to look after each other. And it was a wonderful evening and a beautiful sunny evening. And unfortunately, I couldn't go on the walk because I wasn't well enough, but I'm so grateful that you've done a walkway for women, and I hope that we get to go and have a little walk together. I love to do that. I love my Merri Creek. I can't say how much I adore being there. And we have a Murnong harvest that we do along the Merri Creek in November every year. And we haven't done it for a couple of years, of course, but, you know, to be able to walk together and do things that my ancestors did is amazing to me. And I'm very proud of my ancestors, and particularly my grandmother and mother. And I hope that you enjoy your evening. And remember to share our stories, because I firmly believe if we can share our stories, that we can live in harmony. When we live in harmony, we eradicate racism and stigma, and we pave the way for our younger ones to be able to walk in peace. So I offer you all my hand in friendship so that we can journey together. May Bunjil, my creator, surround you all and give you strength and resilience. On behalf of my elders, I say, Woman Jika, Wurundjeri Balak, Yuman Gundibig. That means welcome to Wurundjeri country. For those of you that aren't on Wurundjeri country, I could acknowledge the country you're on, but I can't welcome you there. But I hope their ancestors give you strength and resilience too. I say Nungojin, that means thank you. Nungojin for having me, and have a great evening.
Thank you very much, Auntie Di, for that very special welcome. And we also thank Wurundjeri for your collaboration in the development of the story of the Aboriginal history of the Merri. We acknowledge the contributions and the custodianship of the lands, and always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you, Auntie Di.
Thank you.
The storytelling aspect is something that we kept coming back to during our meetings as a organising committee for the Merri Creek Women's Walk, and we're delighted to be able to share a number of stories today. And we, in terms of the process that we went through to arrive at this point, we had Amanda touched on the fact that it has been an 18-month journey with a bunch of volunteers who have committed time and effort to bringing us to the point here today. It has been a wonderful journey, and Meredith has steered the ship to be able to get us to this point. And we went out about 2 months ago with a call for nominations for women who have contributed significantly to the Merri Creek, and we're amazed with the quality of the nominations that came back. And we landed on 5 wonderful women to share their stories, and we're planning on a second tranche of stories. So stay tuned for that. The 5 stories that we have to present on the website, and then hopefully be able to feature a physical post or a physical marker for these stories. But the 5 stories are for Farmer Emily Connors, who joins us from out on the Merri Creek today, Louisa Mcmillan, Mcgregor, Freya Matthews, and Nick Bastow, the partner of Kasia Zygmuntowicz, who will be sharing her story in memory of Kasia. Farmer M will be kicking us off. Farmer M has transformed Joe's garden into a warmly welcoming and thriving hive of communal delight. The words from her nomination. Not only does she grow nutritious greens, but plants the seeds of friendship and inspired community sharing. The farmers market, especially, has been a vitalising lifeline of liveliness during the local lockdowns, an essential and safely managed port of call waiting for the community each day of the week. She supports campaigning groups to educate market goers on social justice issues. Louisa Mcmillan's story is fostering a ribbon of magic. Louisa has worked for 19 years as manager, CEO at the Merri Creek Management Committee, a not-for-profit group that is a unifying voice to champion and advance the protection, restoration and stewardship of the Merri Creek, its tributaries and environs. She supports and in turn is supported by a team of 18 committed staff who undertake on-the-ground ecological restoration works, community engagement activities, citizen science support and advocacy for the creek. The third story is Anne Mcgregor, a visionary for the Merri Creek. Anne is a founding member and life member of the Friends of Merri Creek and president of the Merri Creek Management Committee. Her long-standing commitments to the many projects along the creek and her professional skills as an environmental planner have been crucial for establishing and preserving community and government support for the Merri Creek. Anne and the Friends of Merri Creek are the reason that we have the Merri as it is today, and not as it would have been if engineers and road builders had developed as planned. The fourth story is Freya Matthews, and I was lucky enough to do the interview for Freya and learn about her contributions to the creek over the years. And her story is about re-inhabiting the Merri Creek. Freya is an emeritus professor of environmental philosophy at La Trobe University and has been a tireless advocate for the Merri Creek for many decades. She was appointed philosopher in residence at Ceres and has inspired hundreds of students to practice respect and care through her teaching and passionate engagement in her local bioregion. In 1999, she undertook a special 7-day journey with 2 other friends to the source of the Merri, and that's what she'll be talking about today, as well as some other ideas. And finally, to wrap things up, we have Nick Bastow, who's the partner of Kasia Zygmuntowicz, talking about building community. Kasia made an extraordinary contribution to many communities around the Merri Creek in her nearly 30 years of living in the Sumner Estate in Northcote. From 2010 to 2017, she was actively involved in environmental projects at the primary school, helping to establish and maintain a much-loved sensory garden, creating climate change rally banners with students, researching and documenting an Aboriginal reconciliation timeline, initiating and running the Enviro store at the annual school fete. Her great love of the Merri Creek continued until she sadly passed away in 2019. And this story is a tribute to an incredible woman. So we've got 5 fabulous stories that will be up on the Merri Creek Women's Walk website, where you'll be able to see those particular stories that were recorded, collated, and presented by volunteers from the Australian Water Association Committee and friends of the Australian Water Association Committee. And we thank the storytellers for their efforts in compiling that information. And enough from me. I'll now hand over to Farmer M to talk about fertile ground at Joe's garden.
Hi, can you see me and hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. So first of all, Auntie Di, thank you so much for that beautiful welcome to country. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, but I hope to one day. I've met a number of Wurundjeri, Charlie, Auntie Charlie, Auntie Annette. Auntie Annette came down and did a smoking ceremony, cleansing ceremony down here after that woman was attacked, and she helped us cleanse the space. So I really thank you for that for that welcome and that hand in friendship. I didn't know that I didn't know that it was actually a really important women's space, but I can certainly feel it. I feel the power of this place, and I've had the privilege of working here for 6 years, and the people that I meet, the energy that's around this space, it feels like it's really like what we were talking about. It's fertile ground for beautiful gatherings to occur, and so I certainly do feel that power. I'll tell you a little bit about the farm. So the farm, as it looks like here, started as a Chinese market garden. Prior to that, obviously, it's been a site of agriculture for over 50,000 years. But in the late 1800s, it started as a Chinese market garden. And then after the Chinese family sold the land to Joe Garita, it then was handed on to the Garita family, and that's where we get our name from. We still grow Joe's very special crops, like the broad beans behind me. I don't know if you can see them. So each year we save these beautiful beans. We save them because they're the sweetest, they're the largest, and we sell them. We continue to sell them to his customers. So in that, and his family is still heavily involved. His cousin, Uncle Vince, is actually still today, right now in the afternoon, is still managing a little tiny plot of the farm, and he's my farming mentor. So I go to him for advice on different farming styles and things like that. And he's currently preparing the ground for a very lush mint patch. So we're very lucky to be collaborating with the Garita family, and now, along with the Garita family, we've got a whole lot of other groups that are popping up. We've started working with the Wurundjeri Corporation on a Balam project, which means butterfly in Woiwurrung language. Charlie and the aunties decided that this was a really important, could potentially be a transformational community project. So called it after the butterfly, which I think is absolutely beautiful. What the Balam project is we've dedicated 3 garden beds in the heart of the farm, because we believe that we should be leading with our hearts when it comes to moving through this world. So we've dedicated 3 garden beds to work with the Wurundjeri in a working partnership in growing bush food and creating culturally relevant work for the First Nations people. It's been I've really felt, and Auntie Di, I really feel the generosity of the Wurundjeri people. Every time I give someone a call, there's like a massive generous spirit that I cannot believe that I am able to receive. But yeah, so I see that this is the future of the farm. So potentially you may see, today we've got a whole lot of crops that are, we've got lots of silver beet, lettuces, spring onions, leeks, bok choy, and radishes that are sold at the farm gate, or Fair Food, or the main site at the main site in Ceres, down in the grocery. But I believe that if we follow our heart and we, grow what's suited to this land, as Uncle Dave Wandon talks about, potentially we'll be seeing this, this plot growing a lot more crops such as warrigal greens and murnong, which is much suited to this country. There's other projects that have popped up. I'll just squeeze them into my 5 minutes. So the latest project is we work with the Islamic Society of Victoria on a women's garden club. And so we've created a space for women to, Islamic women to garden, and they've got their own little community garden plot just at the back there. They started last week on the plot. It was hard to get it going during COVID, but we finally got it started. So that's another exciting project in the wings. What else can I tell you about the farm? I suppose my own personal journey. I feel, incredibly privileged to be here, to be able to sink a whole lot of time here. I wouldn't have it any other way. I feel stronger, and I also feel stronger in the knowledge that the little kids, the little people that ride by on the backs of their parents' backs, they see a woman in a male-dominated industry driving tractors and hauling heavy tarps and things like that, and I think, wow, maybe they'll look at me and think, oh, that's actually possible, and for little boys to also see that and respect that. So I see the power in that, and I'm always very, very happy and very thankful and pinch myself for the opportunity that I have here. And thank you so much for the nomination. I think it's Meredith, your introduction was, it actually made me cry a little bit, because the attack that happened very close to Joe's Market Garden is with me, and every day I think about it every day, and it hurts me to think that could happen at broad daylight in pretty much in my workplace. But what I see from that moment, after the cleansing that happened with Auntie Di, from that moment there was an explosion of community activity around that area, and that was related to the farm gate. But also a lot of people, I think, have instead of security cameras and lighting and things like that, which were thrown about as ideas to keep people safe, I think the community has somehow figured out that actually activity and getting together and gathering and being healthy on the creek, running with groups of people and bird watching together has actually satisfied that need and protected and kept people safe. So yeah, thank you again, everybody. And I can't wait to hear everyone else's stories.
Such powerful stuff. Thanks, Farmer Em, and thanks for all the work you do out there at Joe's Garden. So many exciting projects. Next up, we've got Louisa Mcmillan, fostering a ribbon of magic.
Thanks.
Over to you, Louisa.
Thanks, Sam, and thank you to all the wonderful organisers at AWA and their supporters. And thanks to Auntie Di for such a generous and warm welcome. I think, Sam, you mentioned earlier that I've worked at Merri Creek Management Committee for almost 20 years, and that's been an enormous privilege. As a consequence, I live and breathe Merri Creek matters every working day, the good and the bad and everything in between. And I live locally, just in East Brunswick. So Merri Creek's often a focus on weekends as well. Never more so than during the lockdown periods and restrictions of the COVID pandemic. And I think any of us who have been to Merri Creek during the last 18 months can see that there are hundreds, it must be thousands of people who have been taking the chance to get to know Merri Creek more intimately, you know, within their 5 kilometre or their 10 kilometre restrictive radius. And it is extraordinary to think of the vision that people like Anne Mcgregor, whom you'll hear from soon, the vision that they had, and I know they didn't foresee a pandemic and what a treasure Merri Creek would be if such times eventuated. But we are just so incredibly fortunate to have not this waterway, but so many other wonderful waterways and natural areas around Greater Melbourne, and we need even more. I need to explain the ribbon of magic. I'd love to have coined that phrase myself, but I didn't. I need to acknowledge a generous donor to our 2020 mid-year appeal, who, in making her donation, sent a little written message, and we love getting these written messages. And she thanked us for the ribbon of magic that we'd created through the suburbs, the Merri travels. And yeah, indeed, it is a ribbon of magic from all sorts of different perspectives, which I think this Women's Walk is a testament to that value and the very different perspectives that all come together and merge and enrich each other. But look, 40 years ago, Merri Creek wasn't a ribbon of magic. And if you can see the slides on the screen, you can see in the top left the view of Merri Creek looking towards the Harding Street Kendall Bridge in 1982. It's pretty underwhelming and uninspiring. As I said, there were marvellous people, including Anne Mcgregor, who could see that it could become something else. And to me, it's just amazing, the change in 40 years. Some of you looking on now probably weren't even alive 40 years ago, and I was, but and it doesn't seem all that long ago, but when you look at the changes over that time, it truly is extraordinary and marvellous. And there are a huge number of people, including many women, that we need to, or I want to acknowledge their work, people that came before me, people that have worked with me, paid staff, many volunteers, supporters from other organisations, collaborators. It's really wonderful, and I feel very humbled to be a part of this women's walk, and truly feel that I've been carried here by many others, and I want to thank them. I wanted to tell you about a couple of things that I love. There are many things to love about Merri Creek. I really love the deep time history of Merri Creek. There's a little bit about that in my story, but the story of the volcanoes in northern Melbourne, of the lava flows, the grasslands and grassy woodlands and basalt rocky escarpments that came about through those massive geological processes, and right up to the present time, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung history, the people who cared for the land of the Merri for so many tens of thousands of years. I also, well, you can probably tell, I love seeing the remarkable restoration, looking at the photos from 40 years ago and then looking at the sites today. And I love celebrating that change. And I love the fact that it's involved so many people, and that it's been so visionary, and that it continues to be visionary and vibrant, because there's still a long way to go. The things I'm looking forward to, the vision that needs to continue are, this ribbon of magic needs to extend all the way to the headwaters of the Merri, which are up past Wallen, as publicly accessible parkland. It's not yet. And I think that it's quite shameful, really, that it's not yet, but let's all work together to make sure that there is continuous parkland, a continuous ribbon of magic. And I'm really looking forward to seeing water being returned to the marvellous Wallen wetlands in the upper Merri, and seeing something that I believe could be like a mini Kakadu of Melbourne's north, spring into life in those upper reaches, which are now part of Melbourne's northern growth corridor. So there are huge benefits for everyone if we could achieve that. And I'm really looking forward to a healthy aquatic ecosystem in the Merri, because sadly, although we've achieved so much with the terrestrial environment and habitat for plants and animals and beauty and amenity for people, the aquatic ecosystem in the Merri is not healthy, and there's a huge task to be undertaken to get it into a healthy condition. I hope one day we'll see platypus thriving in Merri Creek, and not the highly turbid, muddy water that I think we've seen on some of the webcams today, which is a sign of things not being healthy in the upper catchment. So I'm sure that we're all going to continue to truly treasure the Merri, its ribbon of magic. So thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Louisa. When you look at it now, it's easy to think that it always has been like that. It's because of efforts of people like yourself that have made it that way into being such a nice place to be. Another person who has contributed enormously is Anne Mcgregor, a visionary for the Merri Creek. So over to you, Anne.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you to AWA Victorian Committee for this project. It's a really interesting project, and of course, thank you to Auntie Di for her welcome to country. My connection to Merri Creek does go back a fair way to 1976, when Bruce and I moved into Brunswick. In those days, Brunswick was one of the cheapest suburbs in Melbourne to buy a house. And like many of the older suburbs, it was very short on parks. It had few trees and no bushland. The Merri Creek Valley in East Brunswick was definitely not parkland. It was covered in fennel up to 2 metres high, blighted by a freeway reservation, and used as a dumping ground for old tyres, offal and other garbage. But it had potential. We joined a walk organised by Brunswick Community Group, pushing through the fennel and navigating by the pylons that carried the transmission lines that are still there today, unfortunately. After that walk, the Brunswick Merri Creek Action Group was formed. We joined up with other local groups and local councils at a meeting in December 1976 to form the Merri Creek Coordinating Committee, which is the predecessor of the Management Committee. And things took off steadily from there. After a few years and mentoring by the original Honorary Secretary, Louise Elliott, I became Secretary of MCCC and wrote a lot of letters and had a lot to do with establishing the Merri Path. I've been involved with organisations focused on the Merri for most of the time since then. It's been a very rewarding experience for me, and I highly recommend environmental volunteering to you all. There have been plenty of challenges to tackle, opportunities to learn all sorts of things, and opportunities to work with many great people, both paid people in doing their job very well and volunteers on a shared vision. And of course, witnessing the transformation of the landscape of the Merri Valley through the northern suburbs has been quite remarkable, as Louisa was talking about before. That transformation is well illustrated by the reach in Thornbury parallel to Anderson Road. You can see a before and after pair of photos there on the screen now. Rather unpleasant looking muddy maintenance track on the left, upper left in 1982, and then the same scene today, just a few days ago, in fact. As you can see, the planting is continuing there. The main path today is actually on top of a levee constructed after a big flood in 1974. The bank of the levee has been planted with lots of Indigenous trees and shrubs, and they've grown into quite a dense woodland, which provides good enough habitat to attract many native birds. Now, as a keen birder, I was very excited that a female rose robin, there's a photo there of the actual robin, chose to live here for some months last year on her annual winter descent from the highland forests where rose robins live and breed in the warmer months. And pink robins, another beautiful native robin, have been living in Strettle Lagoon or wetland just upstream from this spot over the past 2 winters. So that's quite a testament to the success of the revegetation and habitat restoration that's gone on along the creek there. These birds do highlight the importance of habitat and of movement corridors across our vast and growing metropolitan area. Many birds are nomadic or have annual seasonal migration patterns that cross Melbourne, either between northern and southern Australia or across Bass Strait or from high country to the lowlands. So they need these corridors. And if we want to be able to see native birds and other wildlife close to where we live, we need habitat. We need to keep expanding and extending and enhancing waterway-based habitat corridors like Merri Creek to link up across the suburbs. Now, I'd also like to refer to another remarkable transformation that I have witnessed, and that is in the official attitudes and approaches of waterway authorities over the past 40 years. The Melbourne and Metropolitan Board of Works in the 1970s saw urban creeks as main drains with a capital M and a capital D, preferably concrete lined if the money was there to do that, to remove stormwater as fast and efficiently as possible. But nowadays, Melbourne Water's Healthy Waterways strategy recognises our rivers, creeks and wetlands for their multiple values. Quite a change in a reasonably short period of time, which is great to have seen that happen. We still do have a way to go to restore the Merri from the damage done over the past 200 years, as Louisa was saying, and to protect it from the impacts of new urban development that is being planned and occurring right now further up the catchment. But with so many people appreciating the Merri parklands lately, I'm confident that lots of them will actively contribute according to their skills and abilities to the shared purpose and the shared vision for restoration of the creek. In return, they'll gain all sorts of rewards and enjoyment, as I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thanks for all the battles that you have fought over the years to make it such a special place. We really appreciate it, and thanks for joining us today. Next up, we've got Freya Matthews. We've heard about all of the physical transformations, but it also runs so much deeper than that. And Freya, would love to hear about re-inhabiting the Merri Creek and that special journey that you took to the source.
Well, thank you, Sam. And just to start, many thanks to Auntie Di for the very gracious and generous welcome to Wurundjeri country. And my sincere thanks too to you and to Meredith and to the AWA team for organising this wonderful Women's Walk project and for inviting me to be part of it. I'm really honoured and delighted to be involved with the amazing people that are present here today. I moved to East Brunswick in 1979, so it is 40 years. And I discovered the creek sometime during the 1980s. And as Anne was saying, it was pretty much an industrial drain in those days, not at all inviting to walk along. I too remember a lot of high fennel and raw clay along its banks and lots of ugly, forbidding factories. It was also during the 1980s that I became involved in the environment movement. By the late 80s, however, I was becoming kind of overwhelmed by all the different environmental issues that were demanding my attention, from acid rain and holes in the ozone to logging in the Otways, whaling in the Southern Ocean, lead in petrol, on and on. And most of these issues felt unconnected with my own life. They were in distant, scattered, kind of arbitrary locales, and they felt abstract, ad hoc, at a subjective level, not really tied to the meaning of my own life. Increased my, sorry, oh dear. Something has happened to my screen.
We can still hear you okay, Freya, if you can hear us.
Okay, sorry, I'm getting there. Okay, so, sorry. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. So at a certain point, I decided to bring my activism back home, to focus on my own backyard, on my own little undistinguished inner city place, and try to get to know it and understand it, and see how I could contribute to healing it. And that's when the Merri Creek really became salient for me. It became the focus of my new adventure in reinhabitation. Reinhabitation is an ethos, a philosophy, if you like, for non-Indigenous people of becoming native again to one's own home place. It involves learning about the ecology of that home place, its geology, hydrology, its history of colonization, the rest of its social history, its full story. It also involves trying to live within the parameters and affordances of that home place. One aims to become deeply rooted in place materially and cognitively, as well as socially, a member of its larger than human community, which then in turn becomes the source of one's own underlying sense of meaning, which is to say one's culture. So one might become, for instance, a Merri Creek woman, where this is an identity that ties one into the real world, into reality, rather than leaving one stranded in a bubble of human creeds, ideologies, and other isms. This kind of identity is one that expresses itself in local food, crafts, local law, L-O-R-E, local festivals, and art, in a word, local culture. And when every place finds its community of re-inhabitants in this way, every place will presumably be cherished, storied, looked after, and healed. I also found personally that when I started to weave myself back into the fabric of place in this way, my life started to cohere again. That sense of fragmentation dissipated, and a new sense of coherence was born. Walking was to me always core to this practice of re-inhabitation. I'd walked and walked and walked the creek, observing everything at first hand, learning by exploring. And I started to wonder about the upper reaches of the creek. Where had it come from? What was the rest of its story? The only way truly to discover this seemed to be to walk right up to the source. Walking seemed like the right mode of address, one that could call reality into a kind of poetic responsiveness. It seemed to be the way to unlock a hidden door to revelation. And I've talked about this and the walk that I took in 1999 to the source of the Merri with two companions, Maya Ward and Cinnamon Evans, on the Women's Walk website. No time to talk about it here. And now, with the launch of this Women's Walk project, I'm wondering whether we might, as part of the project, organise an ongoing group for walking the Merri Creek. And not only the Merri, but all the Northern Creeks, in this intentional way as a practice of re-inhabitation and poetics that may indeed help us to continue to heal both ourselves and our world. So thank you, and here's hoping.
What a wonderful idea. Thanks, Freya. I know Meredith and I both got a lot and learned a lot out of our conversation. So thank you. And finally, we've got Nick from a beautiful spot along the creek to talk about Kasha and building community.
Thanks, Sam. I'm standing just upstream from the little bridge that crosses over the creek just behind Merri Park in Northcote. And if you're ever near or standing on that bridge, I just invite you to take a few moments to look around you, because downstream is Merri Creek Primary School, which is one of the few schools in Melbourne that's named after a physical part of our local environment and not just the name of a suburb. Upstream from the bridge is Ceres and the Aboriginal Community Elders Service, which are a reminder of a much deeper and longer history that, as people have said, is still around us all today. To the west is the old Brunswick Electrical Terminal and the transmission lines that always remind me of the community activism that's helped to protect this beautiful place. And to the east, you can see the top of Ruckus Hill and buildings that have looked down on the creek over the last 150 years. This was the space that my wife, Kasha Zygmuntovich, lived in and worked in for almost 30 years. Kasha was a historian, and she was always interested in the stories of people who are often forgotten or ignored by the usual telling of history. She was also interested in ways of bringing people together to make objects understand the real world around us all and to help make our own history. She was deeply involved in Merri Creek Primary School, helping students there to understand and appreciate the natural world around them and the power that those children have to help protect our environment. She worked up with the Aboriginal Community Elders Service, helping elders there to remember the pleasure that comes from making things. She was deeply involved in her local community along the creek, running community events, creating community networks, artworks, helping kids walk to school safely, and trying to bring the community around her to protect the environment and to create a fairer and more just society. her love of this beautiful area is a reminder that our waterways aren't the dividers of communities that maps often show them to be. The Merri isn't what separates Northcote from Brunswick, or Coburg from Preston, or Darebin from Moreland. The Merri is one of the things that brings different people, different communities together to enjoy this beautiful part of the lands of the Kulin Nation. So if you're standing on that little bridge over the creek, take a moment to stop, look, and listen to the natural world around you, which I hope you can hear now too. I know Kasha would want you to remember the people whose incredible dedication has helped to protect and restore this waterway over the last 40 to 50 years, and who continue to be its defenders, and we're deeply grateful to them. I know she'd also want you to remember the deeper history of a creek that's been watched over and cared for by traditional owners for more than 50,000 years, and think about what we can all do to help learn, retell, and continue that history. Thanks so much for including her on this walk. I know she'd be really honoured. So thank you.
What a beautiful tribute to Kasha and to the Merri Creek itself. Thanks, Nick. Kasha, what an incredible woman.
Yeah.
To wrap things up, we've heard just a snippet of those wonderful stories about wonderful women. For more information, you'll receive an email following this event that has a link to the website. We've got a story, a virtual representation of the walk with the amazing photographs of 80 Tudor that you can see there with the tawny frog mouths. And then each of these locations on the website, you can click on them and read more information about some of the stories that you've heard today about these wonderful women. And you can click along and just click on each of them, and you'll be taken to the stories and further information that you can find. For the final word today, I'll hand over to Amanda Hazel to say a vote of thanks and to wrap things up. But from my end, thank you to everyone for joining, and thanks to our wonderful women who received those well-deserved nominations and have been featured on the Merri Creek Women's Walk. Over to you, Amanda.
Thanks, Sam. Thank you for an excellent facilitation of the event. Great job. I'd like to say a big thank you to all our speakers and presenters today. So thank you to Auntie Di for her beautiful welcome to country, Emily, Louisa, and Freya and Nick. And I couldn't forget Meredith and say thank you for her vision and her inspiration in getting us all to get to this point today. It's been a really fantastic journey. We're all really excited to get you all to get out and walk along the trail, and we're looking forward to seeing you early next year at an event where we can all meet on site to walk the trail together. So keep an eye out for that, but we're really looking forward to seeing you. So thank you again, and thanks to our sponsors for their kind support as well. So with that, I'd like to say I hope you enjoy the walk.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. I wish you a wonderful night, and we hope you enjoyed today's event. We hope to share a recording with you of the next few weeks. We always share the recording with our presenters first, and if everybody's comfortable with us sharing a link, we shall certainly do so and share an email with you with some follow-up activity links. Have a wonderful evening.